work better for me, start with them.
Sure.
Okay, you're in here twice. Well, there you are, middle school though. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Patrick, did you see that Marilyn Federickson went there?
I did.
That's a sad one.
Yeah, that's what a
Oh,
long
it
career.
looks good, nice.
Long career, yep. And just the way she wanted it, no fanfare.
Oh, thank you.
Today's her last day.
So shy that.
Wow.
I would like to stop by and see her, but.
No, a little bit more, please.
Cleaned
I
up.
think it's gotta go all the way down. It's like right under 10 feet. Perfect, thank you.
Do you know if she'll be there tonight?
I
Should have
I
a
don't
card.
know if she will be here.
Yeah, right over there.
Yeah. Visitor card, yeah. Good for you.
Did you have Marilyn or just Brandon?
I never had her as, I mean, she was there, obviously, but I had Mrs. Torkelson.
Okay.
I wasn't quite as artsy as my brother.
So if you log in and have it, click on reset my password, then it'll let you change
my
it
own?
and you can,
Okay.
then you'll just have access.
Yeah, I'm excited to get
we'll get through this. I know people have busy nights. We'll call the regular school board meeting, independent school district to order. We do have a forum. Patrick's online with us, and I mentioned I'd start with him. We'll have to recall or roll call vote for everything. Mark Parkinson is on a youth field trip with 70 kids, so he will not be with us tonight. Amy is at sports sign up. She said she would be a little bit late tonight. She hopes to be here by a quarter after. But 4 of us. So thank you everybody for coming. We will, if you would like to address the board, and we do have one, you can certainly fill out a form and get it to Carlin, or myself, and we will have you sit in the chair and share with us. With that, we'll stand for the resolution.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Brandon. And the second?
Second.
Thank you, Angie. And we will do this roll call starting with Patrick. Those in favor of approval of agenda, say aye. Patrick?
Aye.
Aye.
David? Brandon? Ken? Aye. Motion passes, the agenda is approved. We are on to communication. Mr. Brad Lundell is here with us from Schools for Equity and Education. We've talked numerous times about C, Schools for Equity and Education. He's going to sit with us and share a little bit about our involvement in that and what they do for us as a district and districts in southeastern Minnesota. So thank you.
So where do you want me to stand here?
Right here, you can sit, yeah.
I can sit, okay. There we go. Well, it's great to be down here. Gradually one and going, you know, so didn't get stopped in Cannon Falls though. For those of you who don't know me, that's my hometown. More than 50 years ago, that's a fine institution. But no, it's great to be down here in HBL country and sharing what we do with C. I want to thank you all for being members. I think we trying to create a strong coalition that looks at differences caused by property wealth and by district demographics, and trying to make sure this funding system works for all districts in the state. And I don't know if you saw the Start Tribune yesterday, but I guess it was a miracle legislative session, but I'm sure that there are many districts, and maybe you're one of them that's thinking like, I'm waiting on the miracle. But again, we'll have ample time to talk about that as the year rolls on. We can move to the next one. Okay, we were founded in 1979, and we were then known as the Association of Stable Growing School Districts, a coalition of low property wealth districts. One of the things that was happening in the 1970s is a lot of the metro districts were declining enrollment, and these districts were districts that were growing. And so there was kind of this mishmash of formulas that weren't quite fitting together. So this group came together, started talking really about picking up on the Minnesota Miracle, the first and only Minnesota Miracle in my estimation in 1971 that really looked at property wealth differences and tried to iron some of those out. The organization was the plaintiffs in the Skeen lawsuit that was in 1988, which created the referendum and debt equalization programs. We renamed ourselves Schools for Equity and Education in 1995, and it's one of these things now that the term equity kind of has, it's like the 7 blind men and the elephant, and like depending on which part of the elephant you have, everybody seems to have a definition of that. We're about property tax and funding equity. That's what we deal with. We trust our school boards and administrations in our members to be able to deal with other issues that are, in that nebulous equity area that seems to be discussed about so much these days. But we're about funding equity and taxpayer equity. That's what we're about. Next. Coalition of 52 districts, cover about a third of the districts in the state, students in the state. And this is one where in Kasson-Mantorville is one of those districts that hits both of these. You're low property wealth and you don't generate much money from the categorical formulas that, the range of categorical formulas that you are used to distribute dollars throughout the state. Your low property wealth, I know that you've got a high level of agricultural property, but it's not to the level. I'm surprised because, you know, as I look, you've got enough students that kind of mitigates the ag land. It's not to say that the ag land's not a burden for the owners of the ag land, but as far as districts go, I was kind of surprised that there wasn't more ag land in this district than there is. But again, for those people who do own ag land, especially on the debt service, that's why the ag to school has been so very, very important to help those owners of agricultural property. Next. Member benefits, constant president state capital, and that was a lot of this year. People asked me to describe the session. I would just say it was raining sideways from the first day, and it continued to rain until May. And we all got wet. Quality programs at general membership meetings on relevant timely topics. We already have our September meeting set up with the annual Morris Leatherman kind of tenor of Minnesota, or the mood of Minnesota, and then also we're having Bobby Burnham come out from the Department of Ed, talk about the BDAC. Because I'm sure all of you folks, the administration and board is looking at that REDAC saying like, I got to do that one. So, ability to network with districts with similar challenges throughout the state. Data and resources, I'll show you some of the data and resources that I do put together for our member districts. And then also Kim Springer is our new community outreach liaison to help the community with local legislators. Some of you participated in the Day on the Hill this year. She does, we have multiple days on the Hill and try to get people to interface with their legislators. And again, I hear they were very successful this year. But those are the kinds of things that we're going to do. And again, the thing is we're trying to do more, I think, with communications to catch up with some of the things that I do need to know on an ongoing basis. I blog daily during the legislative session and then also put out a weekly update. And there's probably more we can do. Next, here we go. And there you look at where Kasson-Mantorville sits compared to the state average. You're $1,600 basically below the state average in terms of general education revenue. This is not special ed, but I'm pretty sure you're below the average in that as well. If you look where the differences are, you look at the top there, you look at those formulas like compensatory and the English language. Those are not places that are generating much in terms of revenue. A little bit higher in the equity formula because you don't have a referendum. Oh, alert, there's a lie. You're not a QCOM district, but then the big one down there, you're $900 below when you look at the referendum local option revenue. You're at the 724 maximum local option revenue. You don't have a voter approved levy. When you look at the local option revenue, the average referendum, voter approved referendum is $900, and that goes all the way up to over $2,000 for the district. You can go all the way up to about $21,000 students. So that gives you the range. You always have to remember when you're below the average, you have to think of people on the other side of the average. And then you're going to have districts like Minneapolis and St. Paul that generate a lot of money in the categorical formula. And then you're going to have districts like Medina, Poinsett, Bloomington that raise a lot of money through their local property taxes. So that's where you're sitting, and again, that's one of the frustrations we have on both of these issues that I'm going to be working on in the next year. Even though it will be a funding year, we're trying to get some framework pieces in place that will really kind of try to lift districts up closer to the state average, so that districts that are well below state average. And I tell people that which seed districts are seed districts, I just say, line up all the districts top to bottom in terms of funding, and then start at the bottom. Next.
I just What is extended time?
Extended time is, that's the, you're probably getting that, I don't know who's that, maybe? Yeah, that, you have a student that's working extra, time to catch up, and they've lost credits, and so there's a lot of times kids in your learning center, how that goes back to you, but that's what the extended time is. You're just going more than a school year with those students. Here's a referendum market value comparison, and the state average and referendum market value is $707,000 per pupil, and you're at 414. That means you don't have much commercial industrial property. Ag land is not on this tax base, but then so it's basically homes, because you don't have a lot of commercial industrial property. So then this is your home value divided from. I haven't looked at percentages of what the composition of the district is, but I think that, it's largely going to be a district that's going to be more homes than anything, far more homes than anything else. If you look at the tax effort now, and this is for pay 2022 for fiscal 23, the department hasn't updated things yet, but I'll get those updated charts out and on the web when I can. That's when you look at, again, this is the districts on the far left are the districts with more than $1 million of referendum market value per pupil. So what they do, obviously, is that, and I always use, track was the only sport that I was much good at. And they're running around the track and they're getting $3 every time they run on the track. Kasson-Mantorville runs around the track to get $1. Those districts are going to want to run, and for you to catch up, you're going to get really tired. So that's really, and then if you look at the state average again, you see that the state average is 1,532, and then 520 on a $250,000 property, and then in Kasson-Mantorville, of course, you're at 724. But if you doubled that, you would more than doubled that. To get to 1532, you more than double the 294, which would be more than 520. So again, this is one of the things where having low property wealth and not having the equalization factors, the factors by which the property, state, local levy, state level local balance is determined, have not kept up with inflation. Because of that, our districts continue to be at risk. Or get a more decision. Here's the adjusted net tax capacity, and again, this has ag land on it, but if you look at the state average, it's about 11,000, whereabouts you're at 500, so about half the state average for, and this is including your ag land. So again, this is I think a function of you have, how many students do you have? 2275, and so again, I know that I'm always surprised when you go up to Kenyon, Wanamingo, where they've got 700 kids and thereabouts, and big expansive backland, and they're above the state average in ANTC because you're dividing by such a smaller number. So I think it's something, that's why I think using that as ag to school straight to the ag taxpayer has worked really well, because it's not determined by the number of students you have. This kind of pays off the debt. So again, that's why that ag to school works so well. Next. So what happened in 2023? These are the, I didn't put the lowlights on there. 4% and 2% on the formula with the basic formula tied to inflation going forward. And going forward, it's a 2% floor and 3% ceiling. So you're guaranteed 2%. I don't know what inflation is going to do. I was surprised when I stopped at the gas station today and saw that gas had gone up a quarter over the weekend. But again, at least in my neighborhood. So again, the thing is we don't know what inflation is going to be, but at least having a guarantee that there's going to be some money there for you to plan going forward, I think is really important. 44% reduction in special ed trust subsidy, which has been a long time goal, and that's also an ongoing effort. maintenance of the voluntary kindergarten seats, I don't think that's something that affects you. There's funding for student support personnel, which is something you're gonna have to continue to work on. There's a fair amount of money there, and you can use that on, you can use that to retain positions that you hired with your COVID, that federal COVID dollars. So if you hired social workers, school psychologists, guidance counselors with those dollars, you can be able to do that. You're gonna be able to keep those positions by using that. I think one of the things though that's interesting about that is that, I've talked to the department about this, if you can't find someone, you can contract. And I asked the department, well, because the minimum is gonna be $40,000 per district. And I'm like, well, if you have, and again, I think that's for, at least for a couple of years, it's gonna be $40,000. So I think the amount per pupil goes up later, and you'll probably get more then, but why wouldn't you be able to just send that money to Zed and say, let's buy all the districts in Zed, send the money to Zed and say, we're gonna hire these people through Zed. They said, well, you can't do that. I'm going like, well, what if Zed held the contract and then charged everybody back for the time? Well, you can do that. Because they, if they can't find somebody, you can contract, and Zed wants to hold the contract, well, like, why wouldn't you let it go through the front door instead of having to go around through the back window? But these are things that they're gonna have to do. The READ Act is, that's one-time money, but $35 million to reimburse schools for curriculum that they purchased, and that goes back to 2021. So if you purchased after 2021, you can get reimbursed for that curriculum, and then there's gonna be $40 million for professional development. The department and Carrie also at the University of Minnesota is kind of, Carrie's helping spearhead the READ Act. There's a lot of stuff in there, and a lot of requirements, but I think it's something that other states have done, and Minnesota has been kind of, I wouldn't say resting on its laurels to some extent, but they've been kind of like, let water find its own level, but this, I think, is one thing, and Representative Edelson worked very, very hard on this, and she listened to everybody, but again, at the end of the day, she really wants this stuff to happen. And as the legislation does as well.
Hey Brad,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but can you shut that sound off? Can we flip that off? Cool, thank you.
What do you mean, you want to hear me?
Yeah, a little bit, thank
I was
you.
just gonna say, that's rare that anybody wants to hear me, so thank you. Library aid, $40,000 per district of library aid, and I think they're working out there too, whether or not, there's language in there about who, to get that library aid, you have to have a certain level of staff member. The department's trying to make that as flexible as possible, but I think one of the things I'm finding out this year is that, I used this example last week, and just say that this year, the legislature was a flood. I mean, it was a flood of legislation, but then the waters recede, and what happens when the waters recede? You look through all the debris. And right now, everybody's sorting through all this stuff on the ground, saying like, well, what does this mean? And the department's actually saying the legislature should have written this more tightly. We're trying to figure out what the legislature was going to say. So there's going to be, there's about 320-page bill this year, 330-page, there'll probably be a 330-page bill of clarifications next year. So again, those are those kinds of things that we're working on. The increase in American Indian aid as well. There's, again, a lot of that was in the governor's bill. The library aid, it's always interesting because the chair of the Senate Education Committee is a retired school librarian. And every now and then you'll see a legislator that says, well, I sure wish I'd have had that when I was in. And they will create that. So that's one of the things you'll see. So what does this mean for KM? And this information, next. I pulled this up. There's a chart. It's called the lookup file, and we posted this when it was available. I think the department may be updating one, and I'll get these numbers. But again, if you look at all the revenue categories over base, about 1.4 million increased revenue for Kasson-Mantorville. You'll see that the general ed increase over base, and also the special ed And then the other categories, which was student support personnel, library, ECFA, a lot of other areas that were increased this year. So again, that kind of gives an idea, again, that there's a lot of money that came out to districts. There's a lot of requirements that came along with that money. And we're sorting through many of those things. But again, it's one of the beauty, I mean, the thing is that like there's the other analogy I've used this year is that both political parties have storage locker, and they keep throwing their ideas in the storage locker until they get a chance to pass everything that's in the storage locker. And this year, the Democrats had control of everything. They went to their local storage unit, opened the key, and let's rock. And so, I mean, that's basically what we saw, is that we saw just a flurry of activity, and they had a checklist of things we're going to do, not just in education, but in a lot of social issues as well. And they basically said, this is maybe the last chance we get to pass this stuff, and we're going to do it. And I think that that's, and had the Republicans had control of everything, they'd have gone to their storage locker and they'd have opened their said, we're going to do our stuff in our storage locker. So I think that that's, when you have divided government, obviously the storage lockers don't get opened. And I think that each side gets to take out a few things out of the storage locker, but not, it's not like they don't get the look, you know, they get the smaller U-Haul when there's divided government. So our mission is all public school children must have equal access to high quality education, regardless of where they live in Minnesota. That's been our mission statement from the get-go. And so over 40 years, we've been talking about that, and we truly honestly believe that. So, and we really welcome and thank you for being part of that effort. And then last but not least, here's our contact information. Oh, I gotta indent that rose one. And most of the checks have come to the right address this year. And so I think, I mean, last year when we just moved the office and of course, the kind of funny thing is that I still get checks for a couple of C treasurers. It says like schools record education treasurer so-and-so, and a couple of those guys are in the ground right now. So yeah, that's not fun. They need to update the file. But there's our contact information. Again, we want to make sure that we're available, and everything seems to be working now. I was having trouble during session with my Outlook, but that's up working again now. So again, as you have questions and you see things that, again, we'd like to hear oftentimes what your legislators are saying, and also then we can close the circle. What we do as an organization, and again, lobbying has changed a lot since I've been, in the 35 years I've been lobbying, that lobbying used to be a lot about, we had the information and we would give that out. Well, the information is available to everybody now. What we do now as lobbyists is we kind of close the circle. You hear stuff from your legislators, this is what has to happen. We come with ideas and things like that. We try to interface, but we try to make sure that we're kind of a multiplier in some respects, as to trying to make sure that our things get on the table and find ways with legislators, working with our membership to make sure that what's happening at the legislature is understandable to your legislators, but also what your concerns are being accurately portrayed to the legislators. So I think it's changed a lot again in my many years of lobbying, that, you know, prior to the internet and Twitter and all the rest of it, it was a whole different universe. And as so much of us we know in this new kind of digital world, much has changed. So,
Brad, thank you for the information. First question, a couple of them. First one, there's typically put together the list of all the school districts, 328 or 25 school districts, kind of lay out where all of the school districts are. Do you have that information with you?
I will have as soon as the department has put together their information, they're still waiting through things. Yes, I will have that ranking probably up by the end of this month, when the department has that. And when I'm at we'll all see the department next week at the superintendent's conference, and I'll grill them yet again to make sure. Because yes, we do need to have that, because again, that does to, when you talk to your community and say, out of 331 districts, I know you guys are in at least the bottom 20. And, oh, you're the bottom, you're number one. So, yeah. Or
We are the
number three-
lowest.
You're number 331.
We're 331 of the 331.
Right, so, yeah, it's turned upside down. But yeah, and I think that people need to understand that. And oftentimes that helps shows the comparative, the challenges that you're running up against when you talk about money, when you talk about, I don't know if you're ever considering going out to the voters here, but voters need to have that information. They need to know how you're doing. But yes, those rankings will be coming.
And then you mentioned they're still working through, I don't know the exact word, but mandates
Right.
that were in the legislation. Any idea when you would kind of have those ironed out, or you would understand what those?
Yeah, I think, again, we'll find out more next week. I think, when the department presents at the superintendent's conference, they'll probably have a better idea. Obviously, you hope those things would be done by the day after Labor Day. But again, yeah, there's a lot in this bill. There's just no question about it. And, but I think a lot of the things, like the non-exclusionary discipline piece, those things have been kind of talked about for years. Maybe your principals have gotten a hold of a lot of that from the MES fund, from MASP, as to what that's going to entail. There's some special ed pieces. I mean, the one thing that's going to happen is the going to age 22 in transition, for transition students. I don't know if you're handling that through ZED or if you're handling that in-house. And so I've talked to some special ed directors and some folks that are going to really have space problems, but then I've talked to some other folks that say, well, we're just kind of changing the schedules. And so, I mean, but again, it's one of these things where, the legislature uses a paint roller and we live in kind of a watercolor brush world. And the thing is that trying to find, there's so much this year that I think a lot of districts are gonna have to work through a lot of stuff. And again, we'll be able to give you more of that as it becomes obvious. I think there's one about active transportation training. And it's it's something that you probably do in the classrooms now with, like, if you're walking to school or biking to school, read this. Or watch. Of course, we used to watch film strips, but I don't think film strip. I'm from the film strip era. And, but I think that there are some things there that look worse on paper than they probably are going to be in real life. It's just that, again, the School Board Association is going to give you they're on that stuff like hawks. I think the thing is that finding ways, and again, a lot of that is your job as board and how that works to the administration and how the administration has to implement some of these things, and keeping everybody in the loop all the way around is always a challenge.
Brad, you want to tell anybody about a new board member?
Mark Torkelson is one of our new C board members. We're very, very happy to have him on board. I think it's great. We're trying to get, again, we've got some new blood on the board this year because people retiring, people not coming back on board, getting new people in with new energy, thinking about the future of the organization, how we can be more effective and how we can be more kind of, expand, we're a group with a fairly narrow focus, but that narrow focus kind of expands into a lot of different areas. And so again, as we can work with new ideas, I've been doing this a long time, I need to hear new ideas. I was just gonna say, is it required that the board wear school colors?
They do a lot.
They do a lot, okay, well, I didn't wear my red and black tonight.
We're proud of our common blue.
It is interesting, having grown up down this way, is that, Kasson-Mantorville was hyphenated before anybody else was. You were hyphenated before hyphenated was cool.
Probably in 56, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
But again, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And again, I just love coming out to seeing members and seeing where you guys live. And again, you've got our contact information there. And just, if there's any questions you see happening, again, I'm going to get on those rankings. And we usually have them out by 1st of August, but this year they've had to sort through some things. And maybe it'll be 3:30 this year. It's even St. Michael, I don't know. Byron. It's like, whoever's ever got the hot dice gets out of 3:31. So.
Thank you for that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to 3.2, consider the approval for a resolution for acceptance of gifts.
I, Angie Richards, introduced the following resolution to accept $12,452 and move for its adoption. Whereas McGinley Rasmussen, Post 4, 55 Veterans of Foreign Wars, has generously offered to donate $500 to FCCLA for leadership training. Whereas Mantorville VFW Post 4555 has generously offered to donate $1,000 to the Comet Pantry. Whereas the KM Softball Boosters has generously offered to donate $3,150 for our coaching stipend. Whereas Mark Siegenthaler has generously offered to donate $1,500 worth of office supplies to KM schools. Whereas Country Pleasures has generously offered to donate $332 to FCCLA for nationals. Whereas the American Legion Post 333 has generously offered to donate $500 to FCCLA for nationals. Whereas Compeer Financial has generously offered to donate $2,500 to KMCE for an outdoor learning structure for nature-based education. And whereas Michael Solon has generously offered to donate $2,970 equally to KMES, KMMS, KMHS art, music, and band programs.
Thank you, Angie. We have that motion. Do we have a second? Thank you, Brandon. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call, starting with Patrick. Yea or nay?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Brandon?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And aye. And the resolution is accepted. Again, incredibly generous community, $12,450 in that. So, with that, we'll move on to committee reports and start with land facilities. Brandon?
Land facilities had an opportunity to meet 2 weeks ago. It's obviously summer, so it's a busy time for JJ and his crew and getting a lot of projects checked off the list before the fall and the school starts again. Kind of running my building and stuff in the high school. Taking care of the courtyard doors and stuff and the science wing things that were continuing to have water in the hallway and things, and so that's good. The doors and stuff are being put here. Motion sensors that are going up in the south gym and stuff are now complete, and the work gym and everything else should be complete here in the next week or so. The wrestling room replaced a bunch of ceiling, acoustic ceiling tiles and stuff in the ceiling here this summer. The district office entrance is in the middle of the project right now. The floor is done, just waiting on doors, but it looks like it'll be mid-August and stuff before the doors are actually installed. Fax room had some tiling done in the backsplash here a couple years ago, and ended up finishing up the rest of the kitchen units and stuff there. Over in the middle school and stuff, also installing the motion sensors to the gymnasium, and also adding a door from the nurse's office into the main office. I don't know if that may have been completed now. It's supposed to be done here at the end of July. In the boiler room, added the additional water heater, and that's complete now. And right now, looking at some in the special ed area and things, additional wall padding stuff is ordered and will be installed later when that eventually comes in. Also looking at costs for potentially replacing some compressors on the roof for the walk-in freezer as well. And so more to come later with that. On the elementary school side, LED lighting and everything has been added to the Blue Pod classrooms, not the pod itself, but classrooms, and also in the media center, and that's all done. And also motion sensors are completed in the East Gym right now. The West Gym, looks like it may be kind of delayed until next summer. We'll see. I see that half of the gym right now has got all the gymnastic stuff on the floor and things, and be able to coordinate that with community ed. May find the best time to do that next year for completion. Community ed also upgraded the LED lighting in the classrooms. And it's been a big project over the last decade or so to rekey all of the rooms in all of the buildings and to kind of get them all linked together with all the different phasing and everything else that's happened over the last 25 years. And community ed should actually be one of the last areas here to be completed here in August. Some more new carpeting and stuff was also done in community ed. And last but not least, on grounds and stuff, just additional. A couple of those bleachers out in Cape Telecom Stadium, but JJ was kind enough to kind of walk through all of that at the meeting and give us an update on where things are at for right now. So that's all I have.
Questions for minor facilities? So a question about that, how is the seating going out there, the additional seating in the Kasson Telecom Stadium? I know the concrete's down.
Yeah, the additional, so there'll be 3 additional rows, and then the front facade and everything else will also be placed. As far as timeline and stuff, I don't know exactly when.
Third week in August is
Okay.
when the delivery date is, and expecting to get it done by the end of that week, so that's our plan now.
We'll be pushing to the beginning of the year, or the beginning of the season, sports seasons up there.
Would be great to have done, though. Something we've needed in this district since the stadium was built. Thank you.
I have one more thing. I just wanted to point out too, that you guys had the opportunity to review the performance. I know it's later, but that was part of your meeting.
As far as all the performance incentives, yep. We also discussed that at the meeting as well.
Anything else? Okay, on the personnel, and I know Mark is not available.
We probably much spent, I think, our whole meeting talking about possible performance objectives or goals, and so I think we're gonna dive into that quite a bit later here, but just it's 2-hour plus meeting. We talked about everything from sustainability to wellness to succession planning to, we even touched on facilities projects and financial needs of the district with our fund balance, and we talked about volunteerism and communication strategy. It really circled the gamut of all the different things that we talked about. So I thought we had a pretty in-depth conversation, and ultimately followed the process that we had laid out previously, where it would come to personnel. And then from there would go to plan and facilities, and then from there to board chair and superintendent to finalize and try to bring forward some more concrete objectives for the board to look at.
Any questions for policy?
Our personnel, Mark also shared with us that the meet and confer that he had was really positive, and that most complaints originated from the elementary school.
And I did have a concerned citizen reach out to me. There was a text message sent out to parents concerning the personnel committee and the fact that personnel committee felt like, or somebody from the personnel committee felt like, that the meeting from finance, our finance meeting was, I think the word they used was hijacked, and that they were concerned was, in this text message was, and it was sent to the entire, to the public, the community, that Superintendent Matuska's entire performance pay would be based on one particular item, and that would be the upgrade to the stadium in those facility projects. And just to be clear, that's not true, and that was never a piece on this, and I want to make sure that gets clarified here in public. So,
And I'm sure a little later too, when we go over everything.
so that was never on the table. It was at that piece. One other thing, and maybe it's personal, but we had a conversation last meeting. It was where we had some concern about job titles and whether we could actually approve a position. And Amy, I think you had done some, or
Yes.
gone back and done some research looking.
Yes,
for-
I did. So unfortunately, it's very gray. So the word from MSBA is that the superintendent can have those abilities if granted by the school board. In none of our policies do we ever grant that permission, but we also say they can't. So what they recommended, and I have a meeting next week with another person from MSBA, is that we clearly state that if that is the intent of the board in a policy. So it's covered and not covered all at the same time, and so they just advised us to make it as clear as possible and likely just tighten up one of our policies. But I'll report back after my meeting next week.
And so I did ask Superintendent to check with our legal counsel to make sure that as a board, we were following state statutes and policies appropriately, because it was considerable. And I think there's probably was concern enough that board members may have changed their vote on that. And so I think it was right to ask counsel about that. And our attorney said that we followed the proper procedures, and we have for 15 years as long as we've done. So, but cleaning up the policy to make it more clear is probably appropriate. So, I just want to clear those things up. So with that, we'll go to finance. In the finance meeting, we held about a 2-hour meeting discussing the summation of opportunities that we had as a district to use in market performance based incentives. So, and based following that, the procedure that we had laid out as a board, we brought those forward, and then I did collaborate with Superintendent Matuska, put those lists together. Then I came back and put those percentages on there. I shared it with the board this morning, and we'll discuss those. So that was really the bulk of the finance meeting. Any questions for finance?
I wanted to point out, part of that meeting, it was a little bit confusing for me from the performance incentive we do in comparison to annual evaluation. And I learned that we aren't doing an annual evaluation this year because Mr. Matuska did not request it per his contract between January 1st and March 30th.
So a quick question, would you like us to do that? Because if any board member requests that, we'll do that. I'll put that together and we'll do it. I'll modify that. We can.
That would be great, yes. I think it's a big goal of ours as a board.
So we'll make sure that gets done. And we'll get feedback in the next week or so. Okay, anything else for finance? Okay, on the policy, we have a lot of them.
We do have a lot of them, and it was the longest policy meeting that I have been a participant of, but very important. So mine are not in the same order as yours. You can see on the agenda tonight that there are some that are up for 1 read, and then there are some that are up for 2, and then there's a mandatory new ones that are 1 read. So I will do my best to lay this up clearly. So under the annual mandatory policy reviews, we have 506 student discipline. And that comes, there's some changes that come due to the, what happened at the state level is how we can do discipline. You know, you can't remove recess and things like that. So we have to make sure that our policy encompasses that and what the plan is. And also how we notify parents and things like that. So that is in 506, which was a big change. 514, bullying prohibition. So there were some changes on the notice that come from the state level. So we had to make sure that that was correct. And then it did add more, for me, it added a lot more depth by adding the word malicious and sadistic conduct. So therefore, it's more encompassing of any behaviors that we might see that would constitute bullying. So there's more of a clarification on that. The 524 internet acceptable use and safety policy, that just adds some cell phone provisions into it. 616, school district system accountability. It takes out the graduation standards and it updates the district advisory committee provisions in that. The 806 crisis management policy goes more in depth about what an active shooter drill can and cannot be. So it's very, very clear. I'm very happy to report that how we have done our drills has been completely how it's supposed to be done. We could consider ourselves the poster child. So it doesn't affect us. It's just a change in the language for districts across the state. Next, I want to the 418 drug-free workplace, drug-free school. And that is all based on the now legalized, well, as of tomorrow, legalized marijuana. The best way that I can explain this is it follows the tobacco and it follows the alcohol, you know, policies that we already have. So it's not anything new, it's just we now are encompassing that, you know, you can't be smoking marijuana on school property and things like that. So definitely take a look at the 418. And just to clarify, any that are a one read, we can review them at any time. So just because we're approving it tonight, if something comes up in the news or something comes up a week from now and we need to pull it again to look at it, we are happy to do that. And I have no doubt that we will, you know, get all the answers we can. So please don't feel that if it's approved tonight, we can't look at it for the next year.
Amy, I actually have a question about this one.
Mhm.
So as we're reading through, how do we determine if someone is under the influence?
That
of
is
cannabis?
a great question, and we are looking for guidance from the state. I know that all workplaces, I know that cops, that law enforcement are currently trying to figure out and nail that down. It's very hard to at this point in time, so we are waiting for more direction from that. I have a feeling in the next 3 weeks, we'll probably see some incidents that are going to dictate how we do that. So thank you for asking that. That's a great question. 601. Now this one, it's 601 school district curriculum and instructional goals. So there are some changes that update the World's Best Workforce Plan. It's a little confusing, and all of the changes reflect definitions that are actually not in the policy yet. This is in preparation for some big changes that are going to be happening after June 30th, 2024. So we elected not to include those definitions until we have to redo that policy, which we will be looking at come next June. So the main changes, so if you look at it and compare it to the one that MSBA puts out, you're going to notice that it's significantly different, and it is simply because they're preparing for the changes that are going to be coming next year. They haven't even talked much about what those specific changes are going to be, so I can't speak to that more. But it's all definition based, and we will be looking at that one again. And there's some obsolete provisions in there as well that no longer are relevant, and so those were also removed from that one. 603 curriculum development, it adds more of the community members into it. So that's, it took out the curriculum development process, And then the other big change was the community members. 709, student transportation safety policy. So that really doesn't affect us as we already, it makes it mandatory to do the K-3 teaching, and we already do that. So that's not something that we have to change. It's just changes that I'm guessing came down from other schools. 504 is something that is also referenced in the high school handbook. I mean, all the handbooks, but high school specifically. I want everyone to take a look at that. It's the student dress and appearance. You can never capture everything because fashion changes so much, but I would like you guys to just look at the wording that's used, and please let me know if you have any concerns. We're trying to be as appropriate and encompassing as we can. But again, that's something that it's very hard to keep up with fashion. 604 instructional.
I think that one, it's noteworthy that that one's not on the agenda for tonight.
Correct, it is referenced and linked in the handbook.
Correct, yeah.
604 instructional curriculum. So it updates the academic standards, and then it, prohibits curriculum that might be discriminatory, and it talks about the procedure for parental review, and so it does include the link or the document if a parent or someone from the community wants to review our curriculum, there is a process, and that is now outlined in that policy there. New policies, 516.5, overdose medication. So this comes, and I call it Narcan, naloxone. We are now required to have it, 2 doses in each building. And so with this policy, it lays out who's in charge of the training, who needs to be trained, where these doses are going to be, and when they're going to be administered. So it includes all of that. And this, again, is mandatory. This is something that all schools across the state have to do. So that is something new, and it might sound scary, but I assure you that with the policy and with all of the people put in place, it will be carried out very, very well. The 621 literacy and the READ Act, it's just the new reading requirements. And I believe in the new reading requirements, they talk about, they take out is it the world's best workforce that has proficient by 3rd grade, and they want proficiency at each level. And so it kind of defines what that means and what that looks like. So that's a new policy, a mandatory policy. 624 online instruction. For us, we removed the online option. We had that in place during COVID, but it's not an option anymore. So we went ahead and we removed that. And then public data and data subject requests. It lays out exactly what can be public and what cannot be, and the process and the form to request data, and then who that form goes to, and then how that gets, that information gets disseminated. So it's a really great policy. I can't believe it really hasn't been in place yet. All of the other one is just it's up for review, no changes unless grammatical, or if there was any statute change, but I can't think of any that have those changes. We are looking for more guidance on the 534 school meals policy to reflect the free meals law. I think we're still waiting on some of the final pieces of that information, but as soon as that's done, that will be up and available for everybody, so we can go through that again. That's a lot. Did I miss any that anyone has questions about?
In 504, there still looks like there's a comment from you that's unanswered about that finding, the shorts.
Yes.
So I don't know if we need to go back to that yet.
It's not on this.
It's not on
It's
this
not on
one?
this, but
It's not on
it's
this.
linked, so if it goes out to students as part of an email in the handbook.
If it goes out as long as the old, we won't redo that until it's approved here.
Thank you.
And then the other question I had was about the 506, because there was so much with student discipline.
Yes,
So I'm just wondering, how do we implement? So is that something that goes through as part of like back to school training? I mean, there's a lot of changes in this particular
when we were
policy.
talking about that specifically, there was a lot of discussion around what's allowed, what's not allowed, when, and who's trained for what, and how we note that in each building. And Mark, I can let you speak to that, but my understanding is that the staff is, the admin staff is ready to be training the building staff on all of this.
With this being brought to the legislature early in the process last year, I think all of the principals are very aware of what this language is. And I know they've got summer workshops with Roger Aronson, their legal, and he's been walking through a lot of the processes with their email as well. But we will be discussing this as part of our this week. We'll be starting to talk about some of this with our retreat that's coming up this week, and we'll make sure that the biggest is the non-exclusionary discipline in K through 3. And that's, those are some of the biggest changes that are in this policy, which just limits what student consequences can be over the recess hour, before and after school, what can happen with in-school and out-of-school suspension. So those are some of the biggest changes in the legislation as far as the non-exclusionary.
Great question. Other questions?
Okay, thank you for that. And with that, we'll move on to student activities. Anything you look like you've met? Anything there? And then Zed, anything from Zed?
I was not present for the meeting, but I did get the recap from it. So they have hired a new business manager who comes from SMS, Jackie Paradise. So I have a feeling that Bob's going to be working very closely with her. They also, big news, they went through the 11-month punch list with Cross Anderson from the construction. And so there are things that need to be taken care of, and they are excited and ready to do that. The challenge has been, which I think we've all felt, the subcontractors to do the actual work. They're out a long time, and so that's been a little bit of a frustration, but it's still moving forward. And then they are working on a solar project, and so there's some grant funding that allows for that, and that's stuff that was talked about when they were building the school. And they went from the 11th in line to, they went from 13th in line to 11th in line to get the solar panels. I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure where those solar panels are going, but I think it's just pretty forward thinking of them to have thought of that in that construction process, and then to be taking the steps to go ahead and implement that in their building, and hopefully make a little bit of money off that as well. They also have made significant hires. Their school psychologist, they hired a 0.8 and a 0.5. They also added a 1.0 behavioral specialist, 1.0 birth to 3 teacher, and then they did get a school counselor at the ALC, which is good. The policies that they're really discussing right now is the same one that we are, the 516.5, the overdose medication. And so in that environment, you can probably understand it's a little bit more tricky than here. So that is what is going on at Zed.
Very good. Any questions on Zed?
Do you have any specifics on regarding the solar panel installation? And
No.
moving forward, what kind of investments that is looking at?
I actually don't, but I will get that for you and send that to you. All I know is that we're moving up on the list, and I know that there was some talks at some point during construction of where that would go. But I will find that out and get back to you.
We include them too.
Absolutely, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, community education looks like hasn't met. Anything there? Okay. And legislative, there's nothing there. So, okay, with that, that concludes our board reports. We are on to administrative board reports, Director of Staff and Student Services report. Okay.
Just any questions for us?
I just say that I love John Gordon, so I'm so excited about the.
Book study we're gonna do, yeah, I'm excited too.
Positive.
I've read a
It's one
few
of my
things this
favorites.
summer of his, and that's the one that really lines up with those 3 essential questions that you saw in my report for you, so, I'm trying to remember them, but the first one has to do with, caring for our staff, how do we create and maintain a culture of care, and then setting goals for our students, and then the third one, I'm blanking, so thanks, Carlin. Oh yeah, leading our teams positively, so those are the things we'll talk about with our PLC leaders, and they have their retreat coming up on August 21st. And we'll read that throughout the year together a little bit at a time. It's an easy read, but it is, his framework you can see there with the star, I think is really great. So I'm looking forward to doing that with our staff.
Any other questions for Ash? Okay. And on to 3.5, Superintendent Communication.
Well, Amy mentioned that Zed was hiring a number of new individuals, and in your packet, Carlin did a great job, and some of you have been on social media and seen what she's doing with our Facebook and our Twitter page, so she printed this out for me today, and I said, well, that might be something the entire school board might want to take a look at. So it's just a little background on all the new staff that are coming to Kasson-Mantorville, and what's kind of impressive, and I thank Carlin for putting this together, is she and it's really neat to see why some people are really choosing CAM to be where they want to work and raise their families. So if you get a chance, peruse some of those. I know she's got a number that are still left, and she adds 1 or 2 every week. So thank you, Carlin, for doing that. I am meeting with the police chief, Josh, tomorrow, and Patrick from Zed, and we're gonna talk a little bit about our liaison officer and how the years went. And I will be starting to ask him if they've got any updates on how they're planning to deal with some kids who might have some effects of marijuana too, and how we can better control that. So that's a great question. And the other piece I have is the MCAs get released on August 24th. And we're pretty privy to that information yet, but what I can tell you is it will put a smile on everybody's face, because our school certainly shines. And we take a look at the amount of learning that took place during this last school year at the elementary level and the high school level. So, and I'd be remiss if I didn't count Jenny in that with the community too. But those, the amount of learning that took place and what those kids did and where our teaching staff did over that period of time is absolutely phenomenal. So I can't wait to share that data with you, and I look forward to watching to see what some of the neighboring districts did as well on their with their learning over the past year. So that's all I did.
Any questions for Superintendent Hughes? Okay, then we're on to public input. We actually have 2 here tonight. I will start with Sarah Ackerman. We'd like to discuss performance incentives, teacher retention, mental health for teachers and students. Sarah, you join us at the table.
Yes.
Thank you for having me tonight. The purpose of me coming tonight and speaking with all of you was to discuss my concerns into Ms. Bertuska's incentive pay. So when I looked to see how you guys come up with the incentive pay, you don't. He does. Which is interesting considering that I can't think of anywhere where the person who receives the benefit of a bonus is who puts forth the goals of the bonus, and also is the only one that I understand that also provides the workbook to back up what they've done to meet those goals without really a whole lot of input from any of you. And if I'm also correct, not once since 2011, 2012 initial year has that incentive ever been denied. Is that correct? Is that correct?
We don't respond.
Okay. Thank you. So I brought with me the first year, of all years actually, of your incentives, Mr. Russo. And so from 2011 and 2012, it was broken down into certain goals and the opportunity that was possible for meeting each goal. And so the first incentive goal was high performance work environment, which was to create a high performance environment in all district buildings. Safe and welcoming environment for students by improving student character and creating an environment where all students feel welcome. High student achievement, improve student achievement on standardized tests. And community relations, to improve relationships, communications with all community stakeholders. This past year for 2023, we come down to a begin analyzing and preparing for the 23-24 budget process early this year based on the reduced enrollment in kindergarten this year. Anticipated number in kindergarten next year and the possible trend of smaller grade level sizes in future years. That's 3%. For 7%, you have to provide an in-depth analysis of the status of the current HVAC and lighting systems in the district, including the development of a firm timeline for Benmar and boiler replacement at the high school. This was concise budget items in the LTFM fund. My concern, along with many others, is that it is highly inappropriate and unethical that you are the one who is responsible for putting forth your goals, that you make those goals, and that also as far as meeting those goals, you are also the person that presents that information to the board. And while the board does get a packet, they do look at all of the information. It's a quick look, it's not an in-depth look. And I'm sure you're having conversations throughout the year. But when your salary for just the 2023-2024 year is $173,000 and $500, we're talking about $17,000. And at the end of this current contract, your salary will be at $187,000. And I'm just curious, with when you started in 2011 and your salary was $119, how, when we can't afford to keep the teachers, when we are the lowest funded district, can you truly continue to expect to receive an incentive bonus to that measure? And so I would really highly suggest the board look at the cost analysis of this incentive bonus. When we're looking at how we can help teachers bridge the gap with their health insurance and with teacher retention and the mental health of our students, staff, and how we have a deep shortage of money in the district. I really think that one of the things that we need to look at with cutting costs is this incentive. I have been a part of the district for my eldest child who is here. She wanted to be a part of learning what happens in her school district since 2015, 2016, when she was a kindergarten student. We lived in Hayfield at the time, and we had the options of Austin and Hayfield, Triton, here, Rochester, Blooming Prairie as possible districts. We chose Kasson-Mantorville because of the amazing community support that Kasson puts forth. At that time, you guys were finishing, that year was the year that the kindergarten pod was built. She was the first class that went through that. The Minnesota Wi-Fi Performing Arts Center was also part of that, and I do believe that was also when renovations and such like that were beginning with the KM Telecom. Also, the pool was fairly new. The library was on the docket for the community. So really, truly a wonderful community to be a part of. It was a very obvious choice. because it was also a choice of meeting in the middle between my husband coming from Hayfield, the graduating class of like 62 maybe, and myself of being almost 300 from Austin. With us no longer really being able to consider ourselves a small town district, I believe the graduating class of 2023 was about 170. That's not a small town. That's a pretty average small town. So the numbers from Brad about us being the bottom. One of the questions I did have was, how is it that we got here without ever putting forth a levy or a referendum to help get to the desperation that we've reached with our teachers? Because I myself have an incoming fifth grader and an eighth grader, and I have a first grader as well. We can't seem to stop the bleed of our teachers. And the number one issue that we have is that, one, we're not paying them what they deserve, not even close. The benefits that they are receiving are, honestly, they're not affordable. They're not affordable and they're not quality insurance benefits of any kind. As someone who benefits hugely from government insurance, my husband is in the military. If you have elementary school children, he was the speaker this past year for the veterans program. He was also, he surprised our children a few years ago when he came home from deployment at school. And so my family is hugely invested in the Kasson-Mantorville school district, clearly. And so I've in the past, I subbed in the elementary school. I've gone on dang near every single field trip for my children. I'm heavily involved in many different opportunities and activities throughout the year with the school and with the community. And I am deeply concerned at the lack of, in these incentives, not once is it considered factoring in teachers' mental health, students' mental health. We're not discussing, there is serious fear of teachers being able to come to these meetings and speak up for themselves. And that there will be, retaliation. Even tonight, I offered to be at Chaotic Brewery for anyone to look at the contracts and to look at the incentives and discuss the meeting tonight. And I got several messages from people saying that they were cheering me on, but they feared being seen in public with me while I was doing this. And that is unacceptable. It is completely and utterly unacceptable that any staff member fears coming to a public school board meeting and being associated with somebody who is trying to speak up on behalf of our district. That's a problem. One of many. Our county has one of the highest suicide rates in the entire state. I find that alumni relations is an interesting topic, considering that we do have students that you will never be able to recruit for alumni. None of us. And so that should also be, that should be a concern, number one. And the transparency of what we're doing for each of our students should also be number one. The fact that this teacher union have to be the ones to record these meetings is ridiculous and unacceptable. These are public proceedings. You should be recording them yourselves. The change in dates very last minute to coincide with the sports meeting, also, whether it was intentional or not, the purpose behind moving it and also moving the location, very suspicious when there's already distrust in the district. Also, I was late getting here because there were no signs, nothing of where to go to be able to reach this meeting in a timely manner. Also unacceptable. The only reason I'm here tonight is because with my change in employment, I no longer need or have time to sub in the district, because at one time I was not allowed to sub in the district because I publicly spoke out against the superintendent. I was banned from the elementary school for a year because of speaking out of the issues that I had with how he was handling staff and appreciating them and how to train the paras, how to make sure that, we were compensating substitutes properly so that you guys could get substitutes to come. And because I went on Facebook and laid out the issues that I was seeing, I was told that I would not be needed at the district to sub anymore. I was not allowed to sub again until the elementary school begged to have me, and I had to apologize to Mr. Patuska. It was also said that I was supposed to sign an agreement that I would not speak out against administration publicly.
That's about 15 minutes, that's.
So those are my concerns. And I know I'm not alone. I also want to know if you guys are tracking how many students you're losing.
Thanks for your time, appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll introduce myself first. I'm Christy Fosland, and I am a former employee of the district. I was a teacher here at the high school for 11 and a half years. And I actually open enrolled my 3 children here. So that's actually kind of the bigger concern is about my kids. I have 2 seniors and a sophomore. And we recently gotten our ACT scores back, and we're starting to look at colleges and college acceptance and financial aid packages and things like that. So it's a really exciting time at our household, but there is some uncertainty. And some of that uncertainty is coming from the school board decision earlier this year. I don't remember what month it was, but in the last academic year, the school board, from my understanding, chose to change the way that GPA is calculated and to change to what's called a weighted GPA. Weighted GPA are used in other school districts, and we don't actually have any concern with the use of a weighted GPA. I think it provides some really good advantages for students that are high achievers, encourages kids to take more challenging courses, the college courses, advanced placement courses, and things like that. Like I said, we're looking at that process for college admissions, and we're looking at some pretty competitive situations. And my girls have done very, very well at school. In their junior years, they took quite a few of those college courses. So college literature, college speech, college algebra, and trig, I think, as well as some advanced placement and some other opportunities to get college credit while they're in high school. And we absolutely appreciate that opportunity. Like, that's amazing. My concern is that the switch to the weighted grading was applied to this incoming senior class. So instead of starting with incoming 9th graders and working that policy through the high school, we enacted that policy for kids that are already in our schools and have gone through some of those classes. So the classes that they took last year, it's my understanding, the classes that they took last year will not be adjusted for a weighted GPA. So if, for example, my kids took 2 college courses last year and they got A's, I'm gonna use the example of 4.0, because that's actually what we're talking about here. My daughters went through the courses, so got A's in the courses. Now this year, they're going into their senior year. They've got their schedules and things figured out. But, and, yeah, we'll just, a student who takes that same course that my girl took last year will receive a weighted GPA for the same class, and they could get the same grade. And their GPA will be calculated differently. So my daughter, who has managed to maintain all A's going into her senior year, is in a group of students who might have chosen to take a lighter load last year to maintain their 4.0s. And those kids then take college courses this year. And they have a lot of options because they didn't take them last year. They have a lot of opportunity to boost their GPA. Again, not a problem with weighted GPA, and I want these good things for kids. This is okay. So our concern has been, how are you going to calculate class rank? Took the exact same classes. Some of them got a weighted GPA for the course, and some of them did not. Same classes, same grade, different NGPA. Kids are advised to take the tough classes their junior year, but also preserve their GPA because that's what colleges are looking at. I feel like your policy and the implementation was unfair to those students who have already taken those classes. We can't go back and retake a class from last year. Like, you can't retake college lit or college speech when you already had an A in it. So there's no way to like bump that when you're already there. So I'm concerned about that implementation. I felt like it was probably kind of a rushed decision. People, and you've probably heard it, like good feedback that this is good for kids, that they get better acceptance, better scholarships. You know, and so there's the issue. We had some communication going back and forth, didn't get answers earlier this spring. I did get a phone call today that GPA for class rank and it's going to be calculated a little differently. So the way that Infinite Campus is set up, the students, once they hit a 4.0, get a class rank of 1. And if they go over that, it's just going to stay at 1. So I do appreciate that. But I look at that and I think, man, if I were the kid then who had a 4.02, and I had the same class rank as the kid that had the 4.0, I'm going to be like, wait, shouldn't I have moved up in rank? Like, how come I didn't get that? And, you know, like I feel like there's just a lot of detail that needs to be hashed out in that. So I'm here just to request that the school board look into that issue again. The admissions counselors at colleges that we've talked to are just shocked. They have never seen something like this that's implemented in the way that it was implemented here. They don't know what to really do with it. They've advised our kids that they'll be okay, that they're going to look at what courses they actually took and what grades they got. But you can imagine from a parenting perspective, it's a little worrisome. We were looking at some of the colleges have merit scholarships. If you have a class rank 1 at the University of Minnesota, it's $6,000 per year renewable. This decision has the power to impact my family, my child, by $24,000. Now I know she could lose her like the kids, right? Like I never expected to get to this point of being concerned about a high class rank. But like I said, we're in that season and we're really, really excited where they're looking at, and the colleges we visited, and all of that. So I ask that you please look at that policy again, make sure that it's even okay to change that kind of policy at that midpoint. I think the typical method of changing that kind of thing is to work from incoming kids and work your way through. I think with the college model with like a course catalog where you're like given your catalog year and that's how you know you've met your requirement. And I think typically the school has done that. You know, that if you're requiring a new set of courses or going to add another year of required instruction in a subject area, that it's worked up from there. And then once you've looked at it, please, can you put it in writing for us? We got a phone call today that was great, but I want it in writing and I want it mailed out to the student and their parent. The schedules are generally set the first week of school, like you've got a few days to make adjustments to your schedule, but this could impact the kind of courses that kids take this year. My daughter still got some holes in her schedule because she wasn't able to get the classes that she wanted. So right now she's got a skinny opposite band that's just empty. So we gotta fill that in somewhere. And I think, just knowing kind of how this is gonna calculate. I have one other issue, and that was simply just a request to review and make sure that you are following policy on job postings. I got a phone call on Thursday morning asking about Honor Society, if I had resigned the position and been the Honor Society advisor here for a couple of years. And there was an email back and forth between myself and Mr. Langemo in late May. He emailed to ask if he was remembering correctly that he was supposed to hire for the position. And I said, well, I've enjoyed it. My new position allows me a lot of flexibility. I would be happy to continue. However, if you have another staff member that really wants it, like that would be acceptable too. And I saw the reason my friend called me was because it was originally on the agenda to hire a new advisor for Honor Society. And I think that's great that somebody wants it. But it made me question whether the job had been adequately posted according to your policy. I know that the teachers, and it's been discussed already tonight, are constantly talking about more pay, right? We gotta pay the teachers well. Traditionally, the way that teachers make more money is to take on more responsibility. And advising is one of the ways that they do that. So I think your hiring practices for advisors needs to be fair. So make sure that you're posting it, that you're following your policy, because if a teacher wants that, they should be considered for it. So that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christy. There's a couple notes. One, it did have communication. There was a conversation, and any student that has a 4 or above this year will be ranked number 1. So class rank, you will continue with class rank. If you have all A's, you will continue as a ranked number 1. Does that make sense? So that addressing that. The other piece that I will just comment on, because I think there were a couple things. One, this board is heavily involved in decision-making and what the superintendent's performance pay has been. Since Guy Paradise brought that up when we initially hired Tuesday and put that in his contract, the board has always been involved in those, just like it was this time. And in determining that and then coming up with those percentages. And so that was an accuracy to say that the board isn't involved. So, and with that.
Well, to be fully transparent, I'm the only board member who did not get to look at them until today, went through all the committees except for mine.
So I don't know if my voice was representing.
Well, I did see your email today to Mr. Torkelson. My understanding is that your request was discussed at length in the subcommittee meeting, and you can comment on that. So I would say that your input, I understand what you provided for input, and I think it was discussed at that meeting. So I would say that.
It was actually discussed briefly, but also in the finance committee, but there were a lot of questions that we didn't have answers for. I think in the future, if we do it, it was awesome to include the committees, but in some way ensure that each individual person is at least a part of one, instead of, like I got a kind of a double dose of it, and I think Brandon, you got a double dose, land and facilities and finance.
It's just touched on the facilities.
Right, so there was people who had the opportunity twice, there were people who didn't have that.
We've never drug this on through multiple subcommittees and everything else in the past. It's always been a very open and great discussion here at the board table that everyone was able to contribute to, what they may feel. And there's good respectful debate on this or that, and then attaching percentages to it. It went about in a different way, and there was some individuals and stuff that weren't involved in a certain committee, just because not everybody's involved in every subcommittee.
Yeah, I think-
But there's still discussion right now.
Right, yeah.
This hasn't been done, and there's still discussions.
Okay, consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as?
Can I go back to that last one? One thing, Christie, the posting,
Yeah,
that is for a teaching position in the contract, but it's not for clubs. And that's what Brock and Trent have both been going on for that entire reason.
So
So
the advising policy that was reviewed tonight is not covered? That doesn't cover, like, they're literally linked in the agenda today.
I was just saying, in the teacher's contract right now, the teacher's position needs to go out to all the teachers prior to it being publicly. So that's where the club posting. And when I talked to Brock, he said he didn't have any other interest. I did get shared from Trent, correspondence that he had with Christie, and Christie said, if you can find somebody else, I'd be more than happy to give it up. And that's why Trent and Brock both made the decision to offer it to somebody on staff. So that's just some clarification. That's nothing about how you did on that process, because I think you really like having me as a Minnesota Honor Society. But in his email, and I read that email, it kind of sounded like if you got somebody on staff, go ahead and give it to them.
Yeah. I would have appreciated an email to say, hey, we're gonna try to find somebody. That was fine.
I'll share that with Trent.
That's not the big deal. It was more, who knew that position was open?
I have a question. Why wasn't it posted to allow the opportunity for any teacher to know it was open?
I would say Trent and Brock probably did ask around. I don't know I don't know what, but we've never posted any of these club activities before. Teaching positions and coaching positions, yes, but clubs we haven't historically.
This position was posted when I took it last time.
I also wonder if maybe that's an improvement we can make, like a policy or formality that's
We can sure look at
consistent.
negotiations,
Sure,
because that's coming right up,
sure, especially with the
because it's a
financial
contract issue.
piece of it, yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, so consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thanks, Angie, a second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Amy. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call, starting with Patrick.
Yay.
Angie.
Aye.
Kate.
Yay.
Brandon.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Kent, aye. Ayes have it. Consent agenda is passed. With that, we are going to action items. We have no old business, new business. Is 6.2.1 approve the application for voice soccer cooperative sponsorship. We have to do this.
We actually were approached by Triton Hayfield, who would like to join our soccer team, and Brock was very much in favor. It states that this has to be no later than 30 days prior to the first day, but I believe because there was an inquiry from Triton initially that they said we could go ahead and do it. So I recommend that we do the cooperative sponsorship. Brock has talked to the coaches and the parents, and I think they're all favorable about this. So we would continue to be the Kasson-Mantorville Comets, and it would be like we do in gymnastics, where it's canteen, and so it's still going to be our colors and our mascot.
Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Amy, and a second?
A second.
Thank you, Kate. Any discussion?
So will, as being the whole school, then will the students practice here and then in similar maybe fashion to hockey, then we would just fill out the district for a portion of the cost for the program or how?
That's about how it works.
And they will be expected to, their own transportation to the practice field, correct? It's not a cost incurred by us.
I don't know what well, how we're, I suppose if we go that direction with a bus, we'd certainly pick them up and not charge any cost for that, but if they're coming in from going the other direction, I'm sure we'll look at some type of cost. We did that with some of our other sports as well. I'll clarify that with Brock.
Thank you.
And then is there, has there been input by the coach for the whole soccer program?
Very favorable.
Yeah, looking at the numbers, it seems like this is a good thing for our students
And the other districts.
and the other districts as well.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so we will do a roll call vote. Patrick?
Yay.
Yes.
Kate?
Yeah.
Brandon?
Hey.
Amy?
Aye.
Kent, aye. Motion passes. We are on to 6.2.2, approve Ashley Kaplan as the Minnesota Honor Society advisor. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thanks, Angie, in a second.
Second.
Thanks, Brandon. Any discussion on that?
I would prefer that we did post it as an opportunity with the feedback we've received and the knowledge that's been brought forth tonight, to give the opportunity to a teacher that would be willing to do it, with the financial incentivization that's tied to it being a Schedule C position.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Have we had any input from the Brock? So they just,
Brock let me know it was the only,
so if we waited for another month, what is the impact on the Honor Society?
I don't think anything, because Christie's so willing to be in a position.
Christie's not staff.
Right, but what is the urgency to change the position right now? Is it just prior to the school year starting?
I'm assuming that Minnesota Honor Society does some volunteer activities in the school leading up to, I'm just thinking. Yeah, or just that and getting school writing and vocabulary volunteers in the classroom to help teachers set up and carry on at the beginning of the school year, the end of the school year. I'm assuming that's through the Honor Society, that some of those opportunities are.
So if we have the same person doing it, do that role of it and wait a month to post it, would that be an issue?
So I think, I don't want to supersede what Brock and Trent have already put in place at this point. I trust my administration there, and know they're not here tonight, but they've obviously had some discussions on this already. So,
I could see that. Because they're not here though, waiting a month and giving them the opportunity to join us, or teachers the opportunity, what would be the problem with that?
well, I think that what I heard Superintendent Tuska say was that Brock indicated there were no other applicants.
On a non-posted position that people weren't aware were open. I can see ways we could do this better, and I think we should just take that opportunity. especially after this past year where so many teachers brought up the financial struggles they've been through. This is a financially incentivized
I mean, I can just
position.
volunteer. I don't need the pay. I just saw an opening and I was willing to step in to that space.
That's kind
Yeah.
of you. I'm just saying for a formality, it's a nice thing for the district to do. It's an opportunity for all teachers, and I think opening that up would be the right thing to do. I don't see any urgency to change the position right now tonight. Giving
Brock said he
along-
was gonna be busy till about 7:30. I'll have Carla and see if we can make it down.
And I can see we do have 2 meetings on, we have a meeting next Monday as well as the 21st, right, the 21st. That, whatever Monday that is as well. And this is the July meeting.
Ashley, how did you find out about it?
I think just hearsay, I think kind of how maybe that other staff member had heard about it too, just that.
The other staff member told me it was on the agenda for tonight. That's how I found out.
Yeah, so I was just looking to step into a role. I usually volunteer on Monday nights at church and that doesn't really work out with board meetings anymore. And I like to stay connected to kids. So I asked Brock what opportunities were out there that would kind of fit with my schedule, and being officed at the high school, I thought Honor Society would be a good fit. He said he was looking for someone for that, so.
Can we move forward on the agenda while we wait to see if Brock's
Well,
available?
we have a motion and a second on the table right now.
Did you respond?
Not yet.
We can all abstain and then we'll move it.
I think this is far, we're reaching, but this isn't for, this is,
Managerial.
We approve it. It certainly is board business. What do you mean it's not board business?
no, we oversee a superintendent. We oversee a superintendent who has an administration that fill positions. This position and everything else isn't being done any different than it has been done. And right now, we're
It
looking
is
at,
being different. It was posted when she took it.
I'm just saying, stay at 25,000.
Sure. So it's a part of our agenda tonight. I do see it as our role. It's a way we can improve to increase consistency. Staff should know about these opportunities. We just went through a lot of meetings, a lot of my time for the insurance MOU, where people are looking for supplementation to their income. This is a perfect opportunity.
Would this be included in the staff handbook by chance? I don't
Do you have something you want to do?
I don't see,
know.
I don't see a policy that that would encompass it. So I'm wondering if it's not, this is again, not one of those opportunities to maybe future thinking to add it to the handbook, the staff handbook, or, because we are as a board required to implement, direct, and maintain the policies.
I think it would be beneficial for us to move forward, and if a staff person comes forward that is interested, and we can certainly have that conversation. It seems like Ashley is open to plugging into any position that may be available, so if a staff member has an interest in being the Honor Society advisor, in 1 month or 6 months, there could be a transition at that point.
So if it's a volunteer position, then is it still a part of Schedule C?
Well, she donated your money back to the district. It would be.
What is the point of doing it tonight versus waiting and just allowing someone? I just feel like Ashley just took on a lot of roles too. So to have her take it on temporarily until we measure the interest in the position, I don't feel like it's very effective either.
And I don't know,
In full transparency, I don't think there's consequence to waiting here. And I don't know if there is interest, but I think it's a good opportunity to offer and to be posted. Especially given the fact that historically it was posted.
I I'd like to
How is
have.
that not a lot?
Hers was.
I don't want to muddy the waters, but why are we not looking at 424.2, personnel employment process, advisors and coaches? The word advisor is in the policy.
I don't think this has to take this much time, guys. I think it doesn't hurt to delay this. I don't understand the resistance to it.
I would, go ahead.
So under 424.2 personal employment process advisors and coaches, it says for B, under B, vacancy announcements, posting will be made as follows unless special posting information is requested. One, posting bulletin boards at each building, newspaper one ads as necessary. So that would be that it would be posted in each building if it was an opening. Now, have we transitioned to online post, like is there an online teacher, is an email being sent out? Because if an email has been sent out, then that would constitute a posting in.
Josie sends emails out.
So to every building, okay. So it is in our policy.
Brock responded back, he's sorry he can't come right now, but, he said, he said he could post it again, but it'd be a long shot if anybody else applied.
So he did post the position?
That's his words. Posting.
It's a post.
I've heard from multiple people the position was not posted.
And right now, it's
I don't think,
that policy is up for first read tonight with final approval on August 7th.
It's not a-
The question is does this board, want to delve into areas that are county managerial issues?
Well,
This is
it's in our policy,
guys,
which we're in charge
and
of.
in our agenda. To approve it with new information, we can't act like we're ignorant in this case.
I don't know what Brock said he could repost it means.
So let's wait.
So,
I think that's evident that we don't know and we don't have Brock here, so
thoughts?
I would like to motion that we move this item.
There's already a motion.
Okay.
We, did I make the motion? Yes. So we could post this week and then we could take action next week.
that can certainly be an option.
So then we all need to vote no right now.
You need to vote.
We need to vote.
Okay.
I can't rescind it. This one. Just a second.
Okay, so let's vote. And we have to do a roll call vote. Patrick?
No.
No,
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 No? Okay, then we'll have it posted and we'll come back next week to get that position approved.
We'll try to have that on next Monday night, then, if there's some interest.
Okay. So with that, we are on to 6.2.3, approve the 2023-2024 student handbooks. I think we can approve them all at once.
Certainly.
So, do we have a motion to approve the handbook?
so moved.
Thanks, Amy, second? Second. Thanks, Brandon. Any discussion on those?
I just want to say that having gone through the handbooks every single year, that any change is well communicated, and our handbooks are very, very thorough and accessible. And so I do appreciate all the work and effort that goes into that, noting that they directly link to any forms, any policies, that policies might need to be updated, but they are very comprehensive. And Mark, please share with your admin team how appreciative I am of their diligence.
Well, I can tell you, Carlin is a key to that entire process, and she always has been and always will be. The amount of work she puts into that is phenomenal. And for those folks that I've got to invite to get some more clarification on those when I present them to the entire board committee, policy committee. And I actually thought today was a great job by Amy bringing us through each one of those. So that was very solid. So, and I thought you hit the major points in each one of those. So I strongly recommend as we take a look, well, I thought the handbooks were some great additions, and when we get to the policies later, I think strong due diligence was done on each of those policies, and I recommend all of them before we get to it. So great work, team.
So we have a motion and a second, roll call, Patrick.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And I'm gonna just go back just to 6.2.2 just for a second and thank Ashley for your willingness to step into that. I should have said that before. And it's not a reflection on anything that happened here, just that we should do it the right way. I think this board feels like. Thank you. So with that, we're on to 6.2.4, the first reading revisions for that. And there is no vote on that, so we don't have anything there, but we're on to 6.2.5. First and only reading and approve of the resolutions listed under 6.2.5. Do we have that motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Amy. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Angie. Any discussion on those? Thank you for those. So we'll go to the roll call. Patrick?
Aye.
Angie?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Brandon? Amy?
Aye.
Kent? Aye. Motion passes. We're on to 6.2.6, the first and only reading for those listed policies under 6.2.6. We have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Oh, I'll second.
Patrick's got the motion, Kate's got the second. Any comments on those? Okay. Take a roll call vote against Patrick.
Aye.
Okay, Angie.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
Brandon.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Kent, aye. And those listed policies are approved. 6.2.7, approve the 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26 literacy specialist contract. Do we have a motion to approve that? Thanks, Brandon. A second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Amy. Any discussion on that?
I have a discussion. This was through a grant, is that right?
This is a 1 year, this was a 1 year position for this finally, so she understands that too, so we put that in there as a 3-year contract, and if there's dollars that follow with the READ Act, that's where those dollars would be.
Gotcha.
And we're anticipating, but that's another place where we're waiting for the rules committee to come up with some, so.
Great question.
Anything else? Hearing none, roll call vote. Patrick.
Aye.
Angie.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
Brandon.
Aye.
Kent, aye. And the motion passes. And we're on 6.2.8, review and approve Superintendent Matusa's 23-24 performance goals. You received those earlier, and I will just briefly touch on those. The cumulative list came as we discussed. They were discussed in land facilities, personnel, and then finance, and then Superintendent Matuska and I took that list and kind of worked it into these categories, talked about a little bit about percentages. I put those percentages on there. Superintendent Matuska this afternoon agreed to those percentages. The KM Telecom Stadium improvements at 5%. That would be the addition of restrooms, storage, and concession stand in that area that's been open for probably, we've had it ready for about 10 years. We've been trying to move on that. That is roughly today a project that looks like it's going to be $500,000 to do, and that would be 5% on that. Typically, we'd have to, so on these on a project like this, In the past, we've, in other districts, hired somebody to manage those projects. In this case, we would, and so when you're managing those projects, they're somewhere between 7 to 12%. The manager, or the general contracting manager or project manager receives. On a project like this, that's roughly $35,000 that we repay, and that we have expectations that Superintendent Patuska would fill that role for that 5%.
Do we have funding?
Yeah, I think there was some misinformation put out there that this would actually be coming from the general fund. That's not true. The funds for this addition, if you remember back in 2019, we had the hail damage where we settled a very large settlement. And the money that's left in that hail damage settlement has still been unspent, and we've been looking, you remember, those of you who were on the board, we looked at the bus shelter with additional storage. We're gonna put that south elementary school, and we decided against that. And so those dollars are still sitting there. Plus, we'll utilize some LTFM dollars because we will be replacing the existing concession stand. So those are two of the major funding sources that we'll look at to try to get this accomplished. So these won't be general fund dollars, as I've been seeing spreading around a little bit.
But the funding has already been, so we already have the comprehensive financial plan.
Do we already have the plan, or are we gonna have enough resources to put that we do have? And will we settle as a committee, because land and facilities and finance are gonna have to be involved with this as we go along, so will there be other funding that's needed, or will it be delayed, or will we get it started? So that's all part of that discussion.
I have a question about this. It says that the construction would begin in the summer, but don't we vote on these in June?
Can you clarify what you're asking?
We're making a performance incentive for the next year. It won't begin until summer of 2024. We vote on whether or not these have been accomplished in June.
I think the completion is all the planning.
So we're gonna pay 5% for the plan of the concession stand. So it's not really the management of the project.
Well, I think the project will be, the plan is that this project will be going, and we will have the bids, and we will be, once you have the bids and you have people in the dates, that's how these projects get accomplished. That makes sense.
Right, but 5%, we're expected to vote on whether or not that's accomplished based on the plan. We're gonna give 5% without actually seeing what was accomplished. It's not gonna begin until after we've probably made our vote, or right at that point. I don't know if that's a feasible timeline in our goal here.
Would you like construction to begin earlier?
Right, I would think that this would have to be completed by the time we vote. And I also think, this is a second thing, 5%, I would also like to see the dollar amount for full transparency.
Do you calculate it?
Yeah, I actually calculated it, but I was going through a lot of documents and I used 168, which I assumed was the next year's salary. Is that incorrect?
It's $8,000.
Right, it's $8,412. So $8,412 for the plan. That will probably be by the architect. So what role it would be, like Kent described, would be the management of the project, but the project wouldn't begin.
In all public construction processes and stuff, there's always a construction firm that oversees all of the planning.
Oh, I agree. I know how that works, but I can't vote on this. There's gonna be a plan, but there's.
But in any public thing, we're always paying additional contractor
This
to
project will
oversee
be
all the
ongoing.
planning. Yeah, and it always, things never get done in perfect order. But
I
you're
think
going to
our
pay a lot more
performance-
for someone else to oversee this project.
Then maybe they should be the next year performance incentive. It doesn't make sense to me to vote on this if it's just starting construction in the summer. In the plan, we would run into hiccups, so we could plan financially, but that plan could change. But we've already approved a performance incentive based on the plan, which in construction quite frequently does change. It needs to be adjusted. So the measurable outcome here is a plan. So you're saying we should vote yes to an $8,412.50 plan. That's the performance, that's the above and beyond.
It would be in lieu of hiring a project manager for that, so.
But we'd be giving the bonus before the project would commence.
So you're wanting to strike the line that said in construction to begin in summer 2024, so then the strategic objective is by June 1st, 2024. That would lead a construction project to build and.
I would want the project completed by the time we vote on this.
So it would never be able to be a performance objective then, because this is going to be more than a one floor.
I agree with you. Because you're saying it's a business management thing that's falling outside of
That's
this
not what I'm
year.
saying, Kate, you're putting words in my mouth. I'm saying that the way you see it is that this is a 2-year project, right? So you don't feel like it falls under it. I'm saying, for me, the way that I see it is that by June 1st, 2024, that's our measurable objective.
Is the plan.
Yes.
Yes, so you're saying in lieu of a construction manager. But that's coming, so we're prepaying our construction manager. So it's not really a performance bonus. The performance hasn't happened.
Maybe I can provide some clarification. Maybe we can put this together for everybody. If you look back to the first year, I think we had a performance package. It was a year that we based it on MCAs, I think it was. And the MCA data wasn't public until August, like it is this year. So some of those dollars were held back until after the completion of that project. And maybe that's what the direction we can do is we go with, you could even split that 5% into two different, you go 4 and 1 or 3 and 2, and maybe whatever your recommendation is. And then when the project is completed, so Kate, make sure it gets done, but there isn't any financial award until that project is completed. And as soon as it is, that's when the board can vote on the other piece of that. We've done that before.
I think that would make more sense.
But because it's not reflected what we're voting on, do we need to, is this then just now discussion and then we revote on Monday?
Well, anything can come up for a motion.
I think according to the contract, we needed to have it done today. That was why there was concern with moving this for today. So we would have to make a motion with amendments and so let's maybe have all of our discussion. before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just wanted to, okay, make sure that there's a way.
So that would be split then. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, is that one being split?
I think you split that 2 and 3, and 2% on completion, 3 on, getting us to that point. I think this would be my recommendation, like we've done in the past.
And maybe that will even change, because I noted for some that we're gonna be talking about, there's no percent added to it, and so I wonder if we somehow add percent to those, and maybe that one drops down to 2% or 3.
Okay, so middle school boilers, that designed initially for the middle school, due to my understanding, budget constraints, they limited the size of that boiler room area, and they did that that compacted everything. And now as we come to the point where those boilers will need to be worked on individually or replaced, there isn't the space to actually do that. And so we'll need a plan and a project to expand that so that we have room, either we pay now or we pay later on that. And so,
is this something that, or, I mean, I don't know how to say this. It already needs to be done and it's going to be done regardless. If this is on the incentive plan, or if this is an incentive or not.
In lieu of the 4 boilers and everything else, essentially needing to be replaced over the coming years in all a very, very large extent. The one issue that we have, everything else, in order to work on 1 boiler or replace 1 boiler, you have to take the other ones subsequently out. And this is an anticipation to be able to give more access to those boilers. So if boiler 3 goes down, you're not having to take out 1 and 2 and incur those costs before doing 3. If that was the first one that goes down, but ultimately they're all going to be replaced, but due to the cost and everything else, it's going to be phased out over a longer period, or try to phase out over a longer period of time.
So it needs to be done regardless.
Ideally, to anticipate savings in the future.
I think it's beneficial to prioritize that future savings, right? I mean, we don't want to just continue to kick the cost down the road because we know that in the future, it's going to have a huge impact, and an impact that we haven't budgeted for.
So my question is, so does this need to be an incentive because it's something that should be done anyway?
Well, I think it falls in line with the project management component and the savings that you get by managing it in-house versus hiring it out, which you would probably have to do in an emergency situation if the boiler goes down.
I do see value in this. I don't think 3% value. Again, we're paying for a plan. The construction wouldn't start until summer. So $5,047 for a plan to move the boilers. I would have rather seen completion within the time before we vote. I certainly don't think 3% for a plan, again, is fiscally responsible.
Do we have the funding in order to actually complete the project at this point?
It actually is smart because it comes from LTFM, and later we go in the hole pretty significantly, so it would offset with LTFM. It only comes out of LTFM, it doesn't affect the general fund. It's smarter to spread out the cost and do this sooner than later, or do this mid-year and affect student learning. But this specifically, again, would be a plan prior to that happening. And
So
right
then
now
would
it's
we-
marked at 3%.
Then would we separate it out similar to what we were talking about for the first one?
Yeah, it's just gonna be tough to, I don't, we use the boilers up here actually for dehumidification, even during the summer months, just to keep the humidity down. So I don't know enough about whether or not we're using those boilers at the middle school for dehumidification. But I would assume we don't want that project occurring while the kids are in school. So it'd be as fast as you can get a contractor after the last day of school to get that project finalized. And the location. Because right now, we think that location would be up on that loading dock. There may be another location that they deem even more appropriate than where we're at. Remember, the difficulty is they built that room too small because the district ran out of money while they were short monies when they built that middle school. And that's why they built that room so small, which gave us the issues we have with those boilers anyway.
So, and then are you anticipating that there will be a summer 2024 project though? So by the end of summer 2024?
I think that's the year will be cheapest to do it. least expensive anyway. And I think it's the year that we can utilize those LTFM funds before we spend a lot of money doing it in 10 years. I think we all remember what the HVAC, costs are looking for in the district in 2032, 33, 34. This would be one way to really reduce some of those costs up front and then allow you to replace the boilers as deemed necessary, so.
So again, would this make sense to, split in half, 1.5%, that we would go down in June, and then the other one, 0.5
Upon completion.
upon completion?
Okay, and then student wellness, 1%. There at the middle school, measuring that data on the numbers, the percent of students in the school feel safe in school. Not measured.
My only question about that is the middle school got rid of advisory, did they not?
No, it's just blended, so 5th and 6th grade are together, and then 7th and 8th grade rather than 5th, right?
Is it still called advisory?
No, it's called common time.
So we might want to change that in there just so that it's accurately reflected.
All right, and then the last is the elementary school parking lot, 1% there. That's been probably our biggest area of congestion and a very difficult place for parents to get in and out of safely for their kids. We've looked at it just in general, saying, hey, we need to figure out some solution to this. And this is a great time to finally do something about this, put that plan together so that we can put, and that takes time because we're working with the city of Kasson to do that. We're talking about city streets. So that would be the other 1%.
I know just in some last conversations we've had previously, it also gets into design of elementary school entrances than when we talked about parking lots. So this project may be a lot larger than we originally think, but I think it's important for us to find a solution for it, even if we can't afford to do it currently, but then we can know what solution is, we can start to plan for it budget-wise.
Yeah, before we, the most feasible way to fund this is through that tax abatement, similar to how we did a lot of the, should say, parking lot improvements, including K and Telecom. A lot of people forget that was a gravel lot for a long, long time. Anytime we had a south wind and a soccer game or a football game, it was brutal for the fans and the kids. So that would have to be probably, that would probably be the direction we would be looking at is another tax abatement, so.
So 1% for another plan for facilities and no funding source for this one.
That's part of the plan.
I just wonder, because we won't be able to do this in the near future without some kind of funding source, how valuable it will be to the district. I think planning closer to when these things would be executed makes more sense. If there are big changes that happen, our plan kind of goes out the window and we need to just re-plan everything. So as much as I too would like to see the elementary school have better flow, I do know that it takes 15 minutes for drop off and pick up, which isn't an insane amount of time. I know people do park there quite a bit earlier, but I don't see value in using this as a performance incentive this year to develop a plan for something that is currently working and we don't have funding on.
I think for parents and students and stuff that really part that's, is in that area between the elementary school, crossing over from the middle school, and then coming over from the high school, and the flow of traffic twice a day is a huge safety concern, and it's very congested. We've had the city, Kasson City Police Department helping out with some of this flow. I know that it sounds like they may not be able to participate in that again here, but I look at this as being an opportunity for the district to make a great improvement in both student safety and the lives of all the parents and stuff that are trying to coordinate the streets between the middle school and the elementary school twice a day. And this is just like, hey, how do we go about doing this? Because it is a bigger project than making a small, decision here in a committee and stuff like that, because it will be big and it's gonna involve the city cooperation as well, and being able to coordinate if an access to, the elementary school needs to be changed or not, so. It's a plan.
I'd rather see the 1% on the other separated student wellness that has 0% put on it. I think that is a more priority this year than making a plan for future.
So on that, so Superintendent Mathuska and I had discussions about these last two that we have 0% on. Expectation is that they're full from the city. I just said, these other two need some focus, and Superintendent Mathuska said that he would focus on those at the same time.
Why was KM middle school and KM elementary included for student wellness, but not KM high school?
Mainly because when we spoke, Kate, at that meeting, you identified that you wanted some student wellness in there. And then I emailed you Friday to see which specific area you wanted to focus on, and I never heard back from you on Friday nor today. So I had to guess which one, and these were the two areas I felt might be the best areas that I felt we probably needed some significant improvements. One is the amount of kids that had feelings of worry or nervousness at the elementary, and the other was the one that you had brought up at that meeting with the number of kids feeling safe.
So I intended for all students to be included, and to point out, your middle school one said 14.6% of students in that survey did not feel safe. At the high school, 18% said they didn't feel safe. I think all students should be included, and I don't know if we make that a student wellness and mesh those together instead of separating them out.
That's the kind of input I was looking for from you on Friday. I
Sure.
didn't hear back from you.
All right. I feel like I talked about blue in the face about this whole thing. It was a high value of mine. I had 2 different meetings that lasted 2 hours each, so 4 hours. I kind of went over a lot of this stuff. But I meant student wellness as a whole in our district. So I'm happy to clarify that tonight.
What would you suggest?
I would suggest 3% on student wellness over the whole district. And I would like to take the 1% off the KMES parking lot.
How would you?
Measure
what
that
would you- Yeah.
by the survey.
And yeah,
I think to use half in this, I think by cutting it in half. I mean, he's focusing on students who do not feel safe. I think that should be a huge priority of the board, and the district as a whole to ensure students feel safe. I also have with me a national survey that talked about, instead of COVID concerns, parents have serious concerns about bullying within school districts right now. So I think that is vital in ensuring our students feel safe.
These are also objectives that I know our counselors and our social workers work on very diligently. So I reached out to both the principals today and I said, I hope you don't think I'm really stepping on your toes here, because I know this is a main emphasis of theirs already. But I said, Kate would really like these 2 student wellnesses to be part of my performance plan. I just don't want you to think that I don't believe you can do it on your own. So that message is going to go to all of them.
how was it reviewed back in 2011 when you had a similar incentive?
What was it? Remind me.
I honestly don't have it in front
I
of me.
do.
So, I'm sorry, you're not.
The incentive was the safe and welcoming environment for students. Improve student character and create an environment where all students feel welcome. So was it received in similar fashion, or, I mean, I'm just curious because I see these as similar.
I agree, there was a lot of interpersonal skills included in the 2011, 2012 incentive package. And we have a lot of facilities, we focused on facilities quite a long time, so I think including these kind of incentives back in would add a lot of value.
Yes, the board has over the years put a lot of emphasis on facilities here at Kasson-Mantorville, and I think what you see are the results of some of those efforts too. A lot of people don't remember much about what this district looked like back in 2011 and 2012. But, and some of you weren't even here in 2011 and 2012. I think what, the growth that this community has seen, with, the actual facilities here at Kasson-Mantorville has been a real kudos to the board here for making that a priority for the district. That's how you're including the bond, because they've always pushed me, even during these performance packages, they've always pushed me to look at other opportunities to try to improve the facilities here for the community and for the children and for the staff that use them every single day. And I think people are really proud of the facilities that this board has really promoted.
I agree. I think it's obvious that it's been a good priority. But I think with the amount of teachers we have leaving and the survey, that we need to refocus and add some interpersonal skills and really add value in those areas as well.
Okay, we've got a lot of teachers leaving, and I agree with you, but I think I shared this with the board not too long ago, that in 2018-19, we had as many teachers leave as we did this year.
Veteran teachers?
Teachers.
How many were in 2018-19?
In 18-19, we hired 21 new teachers.
How many
In
did we hire this year?
19-20, we hired 20. In 2021, the year of, the full year of COVID, it was 11. In 21-22, it was 18. In 22-23, it was 22. In 23-24, right now, it's 21. So that data I provided for you at the last meeting. So, and every district's in the same position, and I think nearly every business, I can't say every, nearly every business, and those of you that work in hospital settings or work in small businesses, you're struggling to find people to work. And when you have struggles to find people to work, that's a good time for people to go find the job they really want to be in. Or they move back close to their home, or they move to a place where they're closer for a spouse. There's a lot of reasons why people are moving careers right now. I think I look at my own daughter, who has had how many different careers since she's even graduated. So I think there's more of a lack of loyalty to the position than there ever has been, in at least in my hiring years. And is that because some people get distraught with what's going on? Absolutely. But that's what impresses me the most about what Carlynn's doing. Every single one of these people that's coming for one of these positions, where we've lost some good people, we've got some people that are coming here because they really think the reputation and know the reputation here at Kasson-Mantorville is solid, whether some people believe that or not.
I think it would be helpful for these teachers leaving to have exit interviews.
Exit interviews come out, and I just talked to Jody about that. They come out the same time she sends out all the COBRA information for insurance, and that happens in August, the first week in August every year. So she sends them out. I asked her about it today. She said the return that we get on those is about none.
Okay, well, it would be nice to understand how those get distributed, and then also,
As I mentioned, they go out in an email with their COBRA insurance information, usually the first week in August.
okay,
I think we need to segue back to our discussion at hand here and what that is.
yeah. I think ensuring that students feel safe at school should be a high priority to the board.
So I'm wondering if, and because the boiler, absolutely, and I think we've all kind of agreed that, a percentage of that percentage will be paid out when we, in June, and then the other part of that percentage when it's completed. But I'm wondering if we
because we already have the funding for the stadium improvements, do we lower that percentage and then add that percentage, make the student wellness one piece, and add that percentage to the student wellness? Because then that's still not quite equal, but it's more, equal of, we're looking at our facilities and our long-term investments, but then the bigger investment, the wellness of our students in the district.
So running the numbers, you're thinking, facilities improvements would be 3% with a 1.5 plan, 1.5% upon project completion. Boilers would be 3% with that same 1.5% breakdown. Student wellness would be 3%.
Yep.
And then elementary school parking lot would be 1 for a total of 10%.
I don't know if that math works out.
Is that 3? Well,
Yeah,
3,
yeah, it should.
and 1.
And we could break it down further with the student wellness, because there are the 3 different schools and there's 3 different ways that they approach it. Where if it was met at 2 of the schools but not 1, then we still have the 2% out of the 3. It's not an all or nothing. And then I would also recommend that we vote on them separately so that it's not all or nothing. We look at each individual incentive and goal and see that that's been, because I believe that work should be rewarded. That's done, and if, that way, if the parking lot isn't what we were expecting or what we were wanting, that's not gonna mean that he doesn't get it for all the work he put into student wellness or the boilers.
I agree with that.
That's a lot of amendments.
Patrick, thoughts?
Trying to decipher student wellness at a high school level where it wasn't put into one of these, and then lumping the elementary school into the one being proposed at 1% for the middle school, and doing those changes. To me, I understand the value in the student wellness, but to break it out like that seems very cumbersome.
Patrick, it's already measured in a student wellness survey and presented to the student wellness committee.
And I just take a little pause when it comes to this surveys a little bit. Just, I'm all for, and it's one of our top priorities as a district, and having a safe and welcoming environment, and that's what we need. When we were basing this on an elementary school survey where, for example, my own daughter, and one of the surveys and everything else in this last year was green all the way and then red. And do you like math? And it was red. She sits in the 98th percentile nationally for math. Why did she say red? Just take some questioning and asking. And the reason she said red was because she's bored. So I'm just saying, we're really looking at this survey as an element of, objective data, whatever. At the end of the day, everything else is not very objective. It's a
Well,
sense. It's
right.
a barometer.
but that's what Mark put down for the middle school one, the 1%. And that was, and we were okay with that.
No, I'm not saying it was okay. I'm bringing up the same concerns for all of that.
Is there other metrics, Mark, that would be better to use than the student survey?
That's the only metric that's really measurable that I could think of anyway.
It also doesn't cost us anything. It's something that's already being done. And I just suggested we do an additional survey. We're using one that apparently was a couple years ago, but it was the one that was presented in May at the Student Wellness Committee. And then we'll measure the growth from that within this year. So at the end of this year, do the same survey. I ideally would have liked to have, a survey and then the growth within the same year used.
Are those surveys tracked to the student level to identify who is not feeling safe?
Mark is shaking his head no.
So there'd be no way to intervene or question further or get more details to come up with just to put substance to it, right?
Right. Well, that wouldn't be a part of the performance thing. That would be something the wellness committee could focus on improving. I know some of their surveys were national surveys.
But if you're looking at making an improvement on that metric, you'd want to know how to measure it and how to improve it. Like you'd want an element of control for that.
Well, I think you can do that without individual data.
Be able to identify the problem.
Be able to improve the percentage, yes.
I think that's what the staff does. I think that's what they're highly trained for, is to seek out those kids and to identify who those kids are. And that's where that relationship building is important. And I mean, that's how we got advisory to begin with, was because there was a need identified and, Lindsay Campbell's very good at her job. Sloan Sukes is very good at her job in identifying those things. And again, this is, Mark's role in it is just facilitating and ensuring that this is happening. And if staff needs additional training, then we make that a goal. We need to maybe seek that out. Maybe we need to seek out speakers to come in, or, that's where you figure it out.
Kemp's and my discussion on it was similar to what you're saying. I'll have a role as a manager, but in reality, it's the counselors, it's the principal, it's the teachers, it's the paras, it's any of our title services. It's all, a lot of that responsibility they're gonna just land on their own selves, because none of the teachers wanna see some of that data where it's at. That's tough. That's why we decided to go with a smaller figure on the student. Not that it was less important, because the percentage there doesn't determine importance. It was determined what percent of the role would Mark actually have to play in this, what I have to play in it. And that may make sense to some of you, and it may not make sense to some.
I was under the impression that the percentage was the amount of time that would be invested into the project. So I feel like with a higher percent, there should be more time prioritized into this incentive.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that the Cam Telecom will be the most time I spend on any of these, no doubt. And I think to be honest, I would say the same is true. The second one was the boiler project. Those would be the ones I spend the most time on to get this done. And some may disagree, that's fine. I understand. I've done a few of these, so
I don't think we disagree. I think it's more that it's just two facility projects that are a good time investment, but we're gonna balance it.
Even when I do facility projects, Kate, that doesn't mean we don't emphasize anything else throughout the year.
No, right.
And we always have.
This
Last year was an academic focus year, and there was one thing in academics in my performance plan. And we spent more time, the leadership team, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, everybody was focused on it. And was that part of the performance package? No, it was not.
So this
But
is,
was it part of our emphasis as a district last year? Yes. And what's one of our biggest emphasis this year? Discipline. And finding better ways, because kids are acting up nonstop. Is that part of the performance plan? No. Is that something we're really focused on in the school district this year? Yes. That and redefining ready.
I think
So
that,
just because it doesn't land in my performance package doesn't mean it's not a priority.
I agree with you. It's what the board wants to see be a priority, though. It's above and beyond items. And you could argue that same logic for the other items. They could occur without being on the performance incentivization as well.
It will, but they could, but we're gonna pay more for it. For this, if we go for the state improvement and we say, and we would, at that point, Mark's got the second largest employer in the county, the largest employer in Kasson-Mantorville, right? A $23 million budget, right? That he's running operations from day to day. And we put this in and said, these are additional things we'd like to see you focus on as part of that. And that's where this comes down to. So for me, this is additional, something that we would have to have somebody else come in and do. If we're not gonna pay him for it, then somebody else is gonna have to come in and do these things.
So we'll pay someone to come in and focus on student wellness as
No,
well?
I'm talking about the state improvement. Talking
That's
about-
confusing for me, how we use a performance metric as we're just hiring him as a business manager then. Like the logic of that.
This isn't just performance, this is him earning, 10% of salary based on these particular objectives.
Which we
That's it.
focused on facilities historically heavily. So now I'm asking that we focus on something more than facilities. Not just, we will save money not having a business manager doing this if we include it on his performance incentivization. I think
This isn't a business manager issue, it's a construction manager.
well,
Issue.
a role. Instead of, we're gonna save money on a role, we could just put it on his performance. I don't think that's what these were intended to be used for. I also think students, there's a huge mental health crisis in the nation. There's a lot of students needing, or getting referrals. I think student wellness should be a priority right now, given the current national climate,
Student wellness is a high priority,
under your performance incentivization.
measure.
Well, it's measured here,
With the survey.
and I actually like how it's measured in that first one, and it carries over into the elementary school one. And if we do similar with the high school, then we have, that's the 3% there. And we're still putting high value on the above and beyond for the stadium project, the boiler project, and even the parking lot. I think it's pretty well balanced if we look at it that way and just reallot those percentages.
But at the end of the day, you're looking at subjective data as well. So it's hard.
I think some test scores could be considered subjective data too, but we're putting a lot of weight on those.
You know, a lot of the things in 2011 and 12 could be argued for subjective too, and just because they're more abstract doesn't mean they're not objective. They are measured in the student wellness survey that's already going out, they're already a part of this. So we're just changing that, changing percentages and including the high school.
What I'm saying is that it's a data point that you're looking at as a subjective data point, let alone a decision by a board, let
How,
alone a conversation by a board. That's the
how,
subjective part that you're referring to.
how would you suggest the students feel safe? How would you monitor that? Then what objective would you use? Because that is one of our roles as a board, to ensure that the students in the district do feel safe.
I would say it's a helpful barometer, but we're actually pitting it right now on the performance incentive. And
Absolutely.
there's the little bit of a mix.
Yeah, there's less control over it. Yeah, there's variables, just like there are with the other things. But it's something that
Looking
does
at
need
this- Looking at
attention.
this is when you're setting a performance incentive and stuff too, like, it doesn't matter what business you're in, you're looking at what that person can do. And you can measure what that performance of that individual did over that period of time.
Which we have in 2011 and 12. Increased
We're talking
performance
about
work
right now.
environment, welcoming environment, increased community relationships. I would like to see more of that included in these incentives. Less facilities. The facilities are beautiful. I want more attention to well-being, student and teacher. That is a leadership role. That is measurable.
I feel confident in the 4 objectives we have laid out. I'm certainly open to adjusting the percentages on them. But I do feel confident that we have 4 strong objectives before us this evening.
And it needs to be amended. Remember the student wellness at the middle school and remove advisory and put in comment time.
I've got the document.
So I believe that the contract states that we need to set this in collaboration. Right? So propose 3% on our facility improvement, 3% on our boilers, 3% on student wellness, and 1% on the elementary school parking lot, and ask for the feedback.
I was intrigued by the splitting the, projects up upon completion. So originally, we said that 5% would turn into a 3 and a 2. The 3% would turn into a 2 and a 1, with the first of those numbers being planning and then completion on the second. And we can mess with those any way you'd like to. Again, the reason I went to 1 on the, when Ken brought it to me, he said 1, I said, I agree. I said, because most of that work done, it's not that it's not a priority, because it is a priority. Student wellness is a strong priority, but I do not have as much impact as the teachers do and the paraprofessionals and the leadership in the buildings, and that's why we chose to keep that at 1. So, and then 1 because it was just a plan on the parking lot as well. So I was very intrigued by the 5, 3, 1, 1, and splitting the 5 into 3 and 2, and the 3 into 2 and 1, and 1 and 1. But somebody just needs to make a motion, and we need to get this over.
I'll make that motion, that we, set the 2023-2024 performance-based incentives for CAM Telecom improvements 3%, and 3% initial, 2% upon completion. On the middle school boilers, 2% in June, and 1% upon completion. And student wellness at 1%, along with the elementary school parking lot at 1%.
What did you say about the boilers?
I said
1% for the plan, 2% for the completion?
2% for till June and 1% upon completion. That's my motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
That's with the changes to the, what was the change in language that we had to?
It was the advisory.
Advisory to comment. I think we can find a little balance in feeling that maybe the board isn't all on board with the percentages.
Thoughts on that then? Angie?
My thoughts were more like proposed before, was balancing it out a little bit more with a 3 to 3, a 3 and a 1.
I also think 1% should go to the plan, 2% should go to the execution.
Say that again.
1% to the plan, 2% to the completion of the project,
In the middle school?
to both the facility and boiler.
I actually see it the other way. I think much more time will be spent in the preparation rather than the execution. The execution is going to be just a short period of time. That plan is going to be where we get it, right?
2% though, the completion will determine if the plan was even well-written. How will we know the plan is good until we start the project? I mean, we intend for it to be, but there's all kinds of hiccups you run into. So 2% would ensure that, yes, the plan was good and the project's complete.
There's more time spent on his behalf than everything else through the planning process.
But with your logic, more money would go to managing the project, right? During the active phase of the project.
Well, we're saying the project planning period is going to be from when we approve this through June 1st of 2024. And our anticipation is the construction will be in the summer 2024. So a much shorter period of time.
I think the bigger amount should still go on the completion because it will, I mean, whether or not 2% or 1%, the plan is good when the project gets completed. We're gonna pay 2% for the plan and 1% for completion. That doesn't make sense to me.
I think of the amount of time that Land and Facilities spent when we did the building project here. Weekly, for 4 hours a week in the planning process.
Considerably more in the planning than we did during execution. Considerably.
It was, the average more than
Probably, sorry.
per year.
Yeah, there's just so much went into the plan to make sure that we got it.
In balancing out those percentages, is the student wellness language changing?
Just the wording from.
Just the advisory?
Yep.
That's the only, okay.
Well, I think we'd have to change the strategic objectives, so it would reduce the high school, middle school, and elementary students who not feel safe by half.
Is that what we decided to do all three?
Yeah, I think that's a great metric to use, especially because it's from a couple years back too. So I'm not so sure that it would be as bad as it was a couple years ago. Just for everyone's knowledge too, 3% is $5,000 and 47, or $5,047. 1% is $1,682. I appreciate the balance to that, to this whole thing as well.
So.
We have a motion and second.
So let's make sure we understand. So 3% on the stadium, 2% on the planning, 1% on the completion. Agreed there?
Correct.
Okay. And that would be middle school boiler, 2% on plan, 1% on completion.
Correct.
That would be student wellness, 1% on elementary, 1% on middle school, and 1% on high school, reducing the students that do not feel safe in half. That's essentially the language.
Mm-hmm.
Does that language feel okay?
Perfect.
What did you say, Angie?
I asked if that language felt okay. This is.
Well, I think it would, because if you put it in here.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know what it looks like at the, at the high school. First coming.
At the high school, the metric was 18% said they did not feel safe.
18.
Yep. Yep.
And then 1% on that elementary school curriculum. So we're adjusting essentially our capital project.
Well,
We're just adjusting really that first one almost.
Is there gonna be a date of completion that we're looking for? Or like how long, I mean, I know the goal is to start in summer, but at what point is it that we vote on it? What is the timeline there?
I think what happened in the past is, Superintendent Matuska came forward and said, the project is, at, I don't know what percent, 95% completion, and then we said, okay.
And just thinking about how we're 11 months out and, you know, there's still punch list items and stuff to be done, but we're waiting on the contractors. And so, you know, I like, you know, that it's close to be done because we can't always, the contractor, you know.
Is that though, is the 95% before the school year resumes? Is that the goal? For the boiler room?
What you're saying.
Yep, so we need measurable outcomes. When's the date?
Would that be part of the plan?
So the question is, so if we put up, beginning of school year and the project doesn't complete before the school year, it's 2 weeks into the school year, how does that affect this performance objective then?
Exactly.
That's what I'm asking you.
It would affect it. That's a part of the performance objective, is to have a date.
I feel the date is by June 1st. We can't reasonably set or realistically as part of the SMART goal, a construction deadline project at this point. We don't even have a plan of what we're going to construct in order to receive a timeline of when it's going to be completed. Much less we would have to go out to bid. We may think that we're gonna get construction bids, maybe this project's not big enough for someone to bid on next spring.
I just wonder if that part is part of the initial plan. And again, it could be a tentative plan, but I would like to know that, with the KM Telecom Stadium improvements, you know, the plan is for construction, but we all know it might need to get pushed back, but so it's not 10 years down the road.
No, I mean, but that's sometimes part of construction. Right, that we hope for it to happen in summer and interest rates are too high, so.
But we're making it a part of this performance incentive. So it does need a timeline.
You're talking about completion.
But we're also pushing that timeline out to completion.
Yeah.
So there's an incentive to get it done.
Completion.
Right, so when is like the goal?
But you can have an incentive to get it done and not be in control of the timeline.
I don't think you have to be in control of the timeline, but this is a bonus performance above and beyond. And part of something we were trying to do was to have measurable outcomes and timelines and use more of a SMART goal. Part of that is having a timeline and expectation for when this project gets done. The way this was written would have given 3% to a plan. I'm saying I think we could make it more challenging and put pressure on this should get done. I know that in construction they run into hiccups. This isn't above and beyond, and yeah, there is a risk that you can't get that. Sure. That's with any bonus, right? But we still need a timeline.
I see our timeline repeatedly stated as by June 1st, 2024.
But we're not voting on the completion until the completion. When are we voting on the completion? What is that timeline? That's what the original thing said, but we're splitting it.
And I don't think you can reasonably set a date in which that construction is gonna be done before we have a plan.
They're holding off a percentage for completion as well. So if it doesn't, if it's December, it's December.
I mean, it doesn't have to be, how about like by 2024?
That's in 6 months, 5 months.
Or, I'm sorry, by 2025.
What if the board makes a decision next year that our boilers go down and we need to spend all our long-term facilities maintenance in that project?
I'm saying that there has to be a means to an end of this. It can't just be ongoing for years. That's not fiscally responsible either.
Well, he doesn't get the money until it's completed. So he would be waiting, it would be.
But there's
So there
no
wouldn't be any-
goal for the completion date. I think that is a weakness in this. I would like to see one. It's part of the SMART objective.
A SMART objective is also reasonable and realistic, and I don't think that is realistic for us to put a date on something for a construction project we don't have a plan for.
It's 2023, it allows the whole summer, including the whole next few months, September, October, November, December of the school year.
I'm saying we agree to disagree. I mean, that's where we're at, Kate. You feel one way and I feel strongly the other way. So we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that one.
So it would just be an ongoing until it's completed, then he could earn the 1%.
When the project is completed. So we still have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yeah, we still have a motion and a second. So let me ask this before then is there an agreement on this language then?
That was just suggested.
Yes, 2-1 on the stadium, 2-1 on the middle school, 1-1 and 1 on wellness,
And one on parking lot.
and 1 parking, sorry.
Yes, for me. I'm ready to move forward on that
Yeah.
motion.
Then we
Thank
have,
you, Mark.
okay, then we have a motion and a second on the previous that we have to vote on before we can vote on this. So, and we have to do a roll call vote, so.
Okay.
Patrick. So, and that is on the previous motion that I made. Previous.
For the, correct.
Which would be the 5-2 on completion of Cam Telecom Stadium. The 2-1 on the middle school boiler, and the 1 on wellness and 1 on elementary school parking lot. That's what my motion was. And we would need to act on that first before we can vote on a 2-1 on the stadium, and then a continued 2-1 on the middle school boiler, 1 on wellness, and 1 on elementary school parking lot. So that's what I'm doing for roll call, and we'll do a roll call for that at this point, and I'll start with Patrick.
No,
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 no.
Yeah, no? Okay, now I'll make the motion that we do a 23-24 performance-based incentive Cam Telecom Stadium improvements, 2% and 1% upon completion for a total of 3. On the middle school boiler, 2% and another % upon completion of the middle school boiler project. On wellness, 1 and 1 at the elementary, middle school, and high school, changing the advisory, and the elementary school parking lot at a 1. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Patrick.
aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Kent, aye. Motion passes. Okay, and with that, we are on to, that's it for today. We have informational items, special school board meeting is August 7th, district office meeting room here. 7.2, regular school board meeting, August 21st, is community forum room. Do we have a motion for adjournment? Thank you, Brent. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Angie. Roll call vote, Patrick, for adjournment?
Aye.
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 Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.